There he is. Tim, J Trident Podcast. How's it going? Let's do it. And welcome to spring training baseball for the Seattle Mariners in Peoria, Arizona. This is the Rooftop Sports, and finally, after 3 years of podcasting together, we are finally in person together, and nice to meet you, J Trident Podcast.
Nice to meet you as well. Welcome to the great state of Arizona. Glad to have you here.
It is absolutely gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. I can see why so many people come here for March and even September for some football. I mean, the weather just feels perfect, and I'm still in awe, but I'm still trying to hold as much excitement as possible because I got a podcast to do. But how did my day start? I woke up at 3 a.m. because my plane was at 6. So I just wanted to make sure I was there on time and or early. Then during the plane ride, I was listening to some podcasts, including Marine Layer podcast, and then some, and they kind of inspired me with an idea. And Marine Layer podcast, if you feel I'm copycatting, just let me know. At least make it funny, though. But they just started their Patreon page, and I decided to do one too. So I was making one while I was in the airplane. And what my Patreon will do, you'll have ad-free videos. So that means when you're watching my videos, there won't be any YouTube commercials interruption, because who wants to pay $14 a month, with the exception of me, for ad-free videos? Not everyone does. So I'll give everyone a chance. $5 a month, not only ad-free videos, but maybe some articles on how I feel about things, especially the Mariners, because they always make me feel about something. And then after that, you're going to get fantasy sports content, where not only will you get constant updates about how my teams are doing, because I do football, baseball, basketball, hockey, WNBA, football, I've already said it, and maybe fantasy throwing rocks. I don't know. I mean, it feels like I'm doing just basically everything. And if you join the membership, you'll get fantasy sports history since 2012, because that's how long I have been playing. So join that membership for just $5 a month to not only experience all those benefits, but also to support Rooftop Sports, as I am constantly growing as much as I can, just as much as this guy is. And J Trident, how has your experience at Peoria been for the last half hour?
It's been an amazing half hour. No, I don't get up here that often, obviously. So I'm going to be at a game again next week, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm excited to be here today. It's beautiful out today. I'm a little cold being from here. I'm not used to this for Seattle people. It's probably a little bit more warm and pleasant for you than it is for me. But looking forward to some baseball. It's nice to be up this way. Beautiful day today.
Yeah, and J Trident, thank you for giving me the ride. I mean, I know that was quite an adventure, where it was a bunch of circling around the departure, and I was like, hey, where do I go? Which train do I even take? This is my first time here. But we met finally. Then we were on the road just talking about a bunch of stuff. We were preparing for this show. And then we got to the gate, and there was a little bit of slight nervousness. Maybe I should have filmed, but I didn't want people's faces in it unless I want to do censor and mask people's voices. Nah, I don't got time for that. So what happened was, the person on the front desk, they were just a little bit confused of like, hey, can we help you? Who are you? They were probably about to say, you can't be here kind of thing. I was like, oh yeah, I have a contract. Here's my ID. It's with Kyle. He knows me. And then she looks at the paperwork and goes, oh yeah, your name's not on here. Let me get Kyle. And I go, you know what? In their shoes, if I was in it, which I've worked in retail, so I get it. If name's not on the paperwork, then you can't let people in. You have to get it cleared by manager, or else someone's job's on the line. So they just did their jobs, didn't blame them for it. But luckily it all worked out. And our friend, the manager, he got us here. And look at this view. You got this baseball field in Peoria. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And right in front of me is the ACL stadiums, like the baseball fields where all the rookies play. So I would do that, but I don't want to hit the rotate camera, so I'm good. So yeah, here we are doing a show. They gave us a nice table at a bar area. So they've been nothing more than accommodating, because unlike another stadium, and I don't want to say it because I just don't want to make people look bad or anything, but when I called this stadium, they were like, Well, if I let you in, then I'm going to have to let everyone else in. And we are this baseball team, not you losers. Now, they didn't say that verbatim, but that's just the vibe that they gave me. And honestly, I kind of laughed and it was kind of like, oh, wow, at least someone's passionate about their job. They just want to make sure that, I guess they have to maintain some kind of respect. But what team was it? I can't tell you. Just go look at the schedule, what it was today. And it's a team that I've already won World Series, already more than us because we haven't made it to. But anyways, here we are in Peoria to do a show. And let's get started. We got Logan Gilbert. He has been called up. He's been named the starter, opening day starter for the Seattle Mariners, which this is exactly what I was expecting because after the last 2 years or 3 years, 2.5 years of Luis Castillo, you kind of saw that, yeah, he's good, he's talented, but he's just extremely streaky, and it got to the point where he was actually a trade piece where the Mariners nearly made the trade, or they at least offered for Tristan Casas, and Masataka Yoshida, but that didn't work out because they just didn't want to take on Yoshida's contract, which, okay, I still would have done it personally. I know there's some that wouldn't have, but there was an opportunity there. But it makes more sense with Logan Gilbert. He's been our most consistent starter out of our entire rotation. George Kirby is out, but even with George Kirby, I think Logan Gilbert still gets the nod. So I would imagine that maybe Luis Castillo will be a 2 or a 3, and then that's going to be a matter of where you're going to put Brian Wu and Bryce Miller. And then I think we're still trying to find out who number 5 is. Their consensus say it's going to be Emerson Hancock, maybe Logan Evans sneaks on it, not sure, but J Trident, any thoughts on Logan Gilbert as our opening day starter?
Yeah, I thought it might be Castillo, just kind of give it to the veteran a little bit. We see teams do that, and Castillo obviously went through a lot this offseason with his name being brought up and countless trade rumors. So I thought maybe they'd kind of be like, hey, you've done it for us the last 2 years, here's the ball. But I think there's no doubt Logan's the most deserving. He was the best pitcher on the staff. So in terms of giving it to the best guy, I think they've done that. I'm really excited to see Logan have the ball on opening day.
I mean, yeah, the guy was an all-star last year, didn't pitch because he had already pitched, as if he pitches enough for the Mariners. But yeah, I'm excited. I think that's a great way to start the season, as he has been the more consistent player. I think it was just a matter of time. Like, there were some speculations like, no, you got to give it to Castillo because he has that $24 million per year, but I don't think starters are made just because someone makes more money. By that logic, at one point, then Marco Gonzalez should have been the starter every single year, even the years of maybe even that one season where, well, even then, like Robbie Ray was making more money. I don't even know what I'm saying, but you kind of get the point where if you're going to make someone a starter just because of money, then yeah, let's go to like Marco Gonzalez and other pitchers that the Mariners have overpaid over the years. So looking forward to that opening day, as I will also be doing a live show for that one to do play-by-play for Logan Gilbert. No offense to Castillo, he's great and all, but I think I'm more excited for Logan Gilbert this time because he is expected. I think he is going to be expected to make much more than what Luis Castillo is making right now, because he has been one of the best starters in all of baseball.
Yeah, 100%. I just, like you said, it's not all about the money. You don't just want to give it to someone because they're making more. Sometimes we see veterans get the nod, and that's fine. Logan Gilbert absolutely deserves this. Honestly, I think you can make a case for any one of the 5. I wouldn't throw a fit about any of them. I mean, I get, Wu and Miller don't have the longevity of some of the other guys, but not a wrong option here. And yeah, super excited for Logan.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you, Dan Wilson, for giving us that announcement, because that certainly gave us something to start. I mean, Logan, I guess he started my video, so he's the starting pitcher for my Rooftop Sports content. So thank you, Logan, for making it happen. Now we're going to move on to what was going to be sort of the bulk of the show, but the night before, Mariners had their highly anticipated spring breakout game where the likes of Cole Young, Colt Emerson, Laz Montez, Ty Pete, and this guy that I can't even pronounce his name, first round pick. Let's get what his name was.
Jurangelo
Chancia. Now, if I said that right, praise me for it in the comments. If I said it wrong, then correct me or make fun of me, however you want to do it. But that was like the standout performance of yesterday, where Jurangelo Chancia He is a switch-handed pitcher. Yeah, usually we just say switch-handed hitters, but he's a switch-handed pitcher. I did see it. He was pitching lefty for a hitter, then he went to righty, and he was like topping up to like 95 to 97 mile an hour fastballs. It looks like he has more speed on the right side, it looks like. I could be wrong, but he is supposedly the man with the upside. He pitched pretty decent compared to the other pitchers. So looking forward to his development. He hasn't played a game yet officially in the pros, with the exception of yesterday. He came out of college, but I would expect him to be coming out of, if he went to college, I was going to say at least maybe a month in ACL, Arizona, so right over here. So I guess I'll be jumping on a plane again to watch Durangelo Chainchia, this time in 90 to 100 degree weather. So I'm going to be wearing some kind of cooling down suit. I don't know. But after that, maybe expect him to do Modesto. So if you're looking for something to watch, go to Modesto, or at least the ACL League in Arizona. I'm very jealous of you, Arizona people, especially Mariner fans that get to watch not only spring training baseball and I guess Arizona Diamondbacks games, cool stadium, by the way, with the hot tub, but also you get to watch all these rookies and these kids, which is awesome. Like, I would love to watch some of these players, especially like the Felnine Celestine, who also performed in that game. And I know that you don't really have any thoughts on him yet, but from what you've seen, what do you think of him so far?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of these guys still have a long way to go. You know what I mean? Till they're in the big leagues. I think guys like Cole Young are certainly knocking on the door a little bit closer. But there's been some impressive performances. They've put on a show. Like, the numbers aren't great for Cole Emerson, but I think he has one of the hardest hits this spring training of any player in terms of exit velo. We saw Laz hit some bombs this spring. Not a great spring for Cole Young. Certainly going to, I'd be shocked if he's not beginning the season in the minor leagues. But the future is bright. It's one of the best ranked farm systems for a reason. And, obviously not all these guys are going to pan out. Some of them are going to, not make it. Some of them are going to be traded, but some of them will break through. And, you could be looking at the next A-Rod, the next Griffey, the next Edgar somewhere in here. So it's always fun to think about what the future has in store. It's always nice to have young club-controlled players, too, for a few years as well.
Yeah, which is why now we're dealing with all these players like Logan Gilbert, Cal Raleigh. They're taking on, like, these arbitration contracts, and some of them, most of them, if not all of them, were very generous about it. Like, if I was any of them at that point, I'd been like, no, pay me more or get me out of here because I'm too good for you guys, kind of thing. But no, they love this team deep down. But when it comes to payday, that's where the difficult decisions are going to be made. So hopefully, in case we lose any of the core players, which hope that we don't lose them, at least there is something in the back pocket, but how much more can they really cycle this at this point? But I did cover the game last night. I was really excited for it. It was actually kind of watchable because it was an 8-7 kind of thriller. There was like home runs by 3 Mariners. Forgot one of them already, but Ty Pete was the one that really stuck out. He hit a huge bomb. It was like a nice little laser, and that kept the Mariners in the game. Michael Arroyo hit a nice 2-run triple. And trying to think who else hit home runs. I forgot who they were at this point. I should have took better notes, but Ty Pete was the most standout. But unfortunately, the ones that we were expecting to make some noise were Cole Young, Colt Emerson, and Laz Montez. As much as like Laz Montez and Colt Emerson have been quite the standout prospects for spring training, they didn't really amount to anything. Like, I don't even think any of them even got a hit. So unfortunately, that part of it wasn't really fun to watch. It was just watching them strike out. You saw Laz Montez just hacking at maybe not everything, but he was hacking at some. And then, like, the most shocking is just watching Cole Young. I don't know if it's shocking, but it's just more sad that we just haven't seen any of that huge standout performance that we were looking for, because considering what the situation is for the Mariners infield, I thought this was a great opportunity for Cole Young to snag any of those positions. Maybe third base if he was comfortable with it. Definitely second base, because the Mariners actually need a clear second baseman, as if they already need a clear third baseman. But unfortunately, his performance, it just doesn't justify on him making an opening day roster, and which it's really unfortunate because there was a lot of hype for him going into the season. I'm going to check his numbers really quick, if I can even find it. But because he hasn't hit a home run, I have to go like to page 2 or page 3 of it. He's actually, right now, he's hitting 167, has one extra base hit. He has struck out more than he has walked. So I think with those numbers, I don't think he's going to get a starting spot or even the 26th man on the roster. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is, which is why I don't believe the Mariners are going to rush him. I don't think they want to make the same mistake that they made with Jared Kelenic. But hopefully by midseason, he will be able to perform and make the team and hopefully contribute, because Mariners need somebody on that infield because they certainly disappointed in that offseason. So, and out of all these players I'm going to predict, I'm going to say the ones that stood out: Jurrangelo Chancia. Did I even say it right?
Jurrangelo Chancia.
Jurrangelo Chancia. Thank you, Google. Let's see if I want to hear you say it again. Put it on the microphone.
Jurrangelo Chancia.
I hope you heard that. So I think he's going to start in ACL, then maybe go to Modesto by maybe June. That's my prediction. Ty Pete is in, I think he was in Modesto, so maybe Modesto to Everett. Then Michael Arroyo is an A+ right now. I think he's going to stay there. Cole Young, probably AA or AAA if they really do think he's ready, which I don't. I think he's going to do AA because usually, and we talked about it in the car, that AAA players are mostly for the stash players. Like they're basically the glorified taxi squad guys. And Colt Emerson, probably A+. He's probably going to be starting in Everett. And Laz Montez, as great as the spring that he has been having, with the exception of that spring breakout game, he's probably going to start in Everett because they just want to make sure that he's not striking out too much, because he did last year. He had some strikeout problems. When I was in Everett, he struck out quite a bit. When I saw it, he was just hacking the crap out of that thing. But at least I did play catch with him, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, those are my predictions. Laz Montez will be A+, but at least in the meantime, Everett, if they have all those players I'm expecting, at least go to Everett, go to those games, get the most out of it, so you could at least watch Laz Montez, at least when he's performing at somewhat of a high level, at least in the minor leagues, so you get to see some easy bombs and catch some of those in that right field grass area.
Yeah, obviously I'm not as well-versed on where the prospects will end up, but I think I'd agree. I think if you're going to see anybody this year, it's going to be Cole Young. I think he will be up at some point. Like I said, just kind of a disappointing spring. Not that I put a ton of stock into spring results, but at some point, like, if you're going to make the team, you've got to have the results too. So a little bit of a disappointing spring for Cole Young, but not worried so much long-term. I think he'll be fine. And yeah, just always fun to see the kids get a chance in spring and the spring breakout game and to get to see them play. And they'll still, I think some of them are actually going to be in Scottsdale today playing, if I'm not mistaken. So still getting some at-bats, and, you know, the future is bright. So still a little bit of ways to go for some of these guys, but, you know, it goes fast. Like 2-3 years goes by fast. So we'll see some of these guys, and starting this year, I'm sure at some point we will see Cole Young, and next year probably some more.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, normally I'm mostly the guy that does the spring training, not the spring training, the minor league stuff. He does more of the Mariners, which he does well. I mean, he does a show almost every single game, which I don't even do, but he does it. So he's more in that department. Me, I'm trying to be a little bit more of diversified. He said diversified, a little bit more diversified. But yeah, we all do our things differently, so it's all good. And now, trying to think what is next on this list is we're going to talk about what we are most excited for the Mariners. And I guess I will just start it off. I'm excited for the potential of how the coaching staff of Dan Wilson, Edgar Martinez, and Kevin Seitzer can do to turn this team around, because they desperately need it. They definitely need a leader like them. And I know I kick Scott Service to the curb like it's a dead horse, but I did notice that ever since Dan Wilson took over, the culture did change just a little bit of an adjustment. Julio Rodriguez had his best month by far for 2024. And then other players like Victor Robles, a little bit of Randy Arozarena, they stepped up. So hopefully, because definitely they do need it, because the Mariners didn't really do anything in the offseason at all. Like, they had opportunities to upgrade their bats, like getting Tristan Casas and Masataka Yoshida. I know that's a very split kind of opinions on how people felt on that potential trade. And also, like, the Mariners only got Jorge Polanco, that's like their addition was just bringing him back. So basically the Mariners have the same team, and what they're banking on is bounce back seasons from JP Crawford, Randy Arozarena. A breakout from Julio is absolutely needed. What about Jorge Polanco? What about a breakout from Ryan Bliss? What about Luke Raley playing a bit better? And what about Mitch Garver and like Mitch Haniger? What about those guys? So that's what I'm most excited about now. Is it guaranteed success? Of course not. No, we could probably be in the position by midseason where we say, oh, is Dan Wilson the guy? I don't know. Did they just hire him just because of name? But no, deep down, I am a believer in Dan Wilson because the way that he had led through a lot of different pitchers, including the 90s bullpen when it was Heathcliff Slocum, Mike Timlin, Bobby Ayala. He managed that, and now he's managing a group of young players and veterans, and hopefully he can take the Mariners back to the playoffs, including Edgar Martinez, Kevin Seitzer of Atlanta. So that is what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I think for me, you look at a team that's been close the last couple of years, frustratingly, because we made the playoffs in 22 and then missed by a game in 23 and 24. So that's not a positive result, but it's not like it would have taken a lot for this team to get in last year. You know, a couple games go their way, and even with some poor performances from some of the guys you mentioned, they still would have gotten into the postseason. So I think if you just want to look at it from that perspective, you know, they're right there. Even if they play exactly the same way as they did last year, they could get in just by a couple games going their way. So I think there is a lot to be optimistic about. It's frustrating that they didn't kind of try to put themselves maybe more over the top in the offseason and whatnot. But there is a good core here. If you can get, you know, JP just somewhat back to 23, Mitch Garver closer to 23, and Polanco, you know, all these guys just maybe kind of like a 5 to 10% improvement, I think you have a pretty good shot. Now, this also assumes everybody that was great last year, the rotation stays healthy, which already it's battling some stuff with George Kirby. So it's not just like, oh, these guys improve and you're all set. There's guys that could take a step back, you know, unfortunately as well. But I think the team will be in the mix. It's just a question of, do they get over the top in the mix, or are they just left behind at the end of the year? I definitely think there's a shot they get in. That I think it'd be weird to say they don't have any chance considering how close they were last season. But the disappointment from fans is also legitimate with, you know, getting in and then taking kind of a step back essentially as well. So, you know, I'm optimistic just for the fact that I do think this is a good baseball team. Just a question of how good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is heavily justified why Mariners fans are frustrated. I even have friends texting me. At least I had a friend texting me this morning. He was asking me, why do you still follow the Mariners? They suck. I don't even know one player. And all I could answer was, I'm a baseball fan. I can't help it. I play baseball. I grew up with baseball. So there's my answer, and I'm willing to put up with it and willing to do a YouTube channel, which is why I do as many live games as I can. Hence why my goal is covering 100 Mariners games for the season. I know I will probably say a few more times more before the season, but I'm doing it so that way you guys don't have to pay for Root Sports or a radio subscription or sit in your car or buy some old radio that might have it still. I don't know, but that's what I do. I pay for Root Sports myself just so you guys don't have to. That's what I do. But on top of the excitement possibility for this team, what are anything else that may excite you for the Mariners?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just the idea that some of these guys can bounce back. I do think Mitch Garver bounces back this year and plays pretty well. I think Ryan Bliss is someone to be excited about. I think there's a decent chance he's going to win that second base job. I think we should be really excited about that. He's looked good in the spring. Now, not saying that Bliss doesn't have some concerns and is a perfect player, but a young guy like that coming up and taking the reins at second base would be huge for this ball club. Allows Dylan Moore to slide back more into that utility role. I think Donovan Solano is going to help. I think he's a good hitter. I think he's going to help with the strikeouts a little bit as well. And I think what you talked about, the coaching staff as well, finding that consistency. You always look at the end of the year and Julio's numbers are great, but it's always driven by a couple really good months and then some really poor ones. Not every month has to be amazing. Obviously, players are going to slump, but there's got to be more consistency where the bad months are more just, average, not awful, or closer to average than awful, essentially. So I do think there is a lot to be out. You still have Cal Raleigh, obviously. So there's a ton to be optimistic about with this team. So, but it's a team that kind of is teetering, right? Like all the things we're optimistic about could easily be pessimistic. Maybe that's just who Julio is as a hitter. He's just going to be incredibly streaky. Ryan Bliss might just be the guy we saw last year, which is fine, but it's not going to put the team over the top. Polanco and Garver may not bounce back. So there's definitely for all the optimism, you could just as easily, and that's kind of where the team is, right? Like a couple things go their way. They could be 91, 92 win team. And a couple things don't go their way, which you've already seen with Kirby's injury. Maybe they're closer to 83, 84, which that's the difference between the playoffs and not.
Yeah, those are good points. We've all agreed that this team's success is going to depend on the bounce backs, especially on the offense. And we've already said those names, so hopefully they will step up and at least play. Some of them play at their 23 levels. Like I'll even take a 2023 Julio Rodriguez. Heck, we take a rookie Julio Rodriguez. What about Mitch Garver? Like the Marine Layer podcast said, if that was one of them, correct me if I'm wrong, they said Mitch Garver is good on odd years. So there's that going for them. And JP Crawford also seems to be an odd year kind of guy too, because I noticed 21, he was creeping for all-star talk. 23, it was that driveline year that he had where he hit almost 20 home runs as a leadoff hitter. And then 25, we'll see what we do need it. He does need it because maybe he's going to have to feel that pressure because there's a lot of prospects that are on his tail. We got Cole Young right on his tail, Cole Emerson, and Felny and Celestine, who I didn't even talk about, that he got to have some game time. So that was one of the more exciting parts of the game yesterday because he is actually one of my favorite prospects going into the minor leagues. And now we should go into the most concern, which there are concerns I have with this team, and I would say the offense, but I've already pretty much talked about the concerns of the offense for the past few minutes, if not 10 or more minutes. But the concern I have is the health of the bullpen, because that's also going to depend on everyone's health, because last season that bullpen was hyped to be the best in baseball. I was actually terrified just looking at the picture of Matt Brash, Gregory Santos, and Andres Munoz. That should have been, if they were healthy, you would have forgotten about how good that bullpen really was in 2023. And that's when I was criticizing the bullpen because I'm an emotional baseball fan. But things are still not exactly going the way it is for the bullpen. We got Matt Brash he's still on a recovery. I'm going to say my prediction, he returns by June, and then maybe, and some they say maybe April or May, but not exactly sure. So there's not really a timeable. We heard Dan Wilson say maybe more like halftime, more like the All-Star break. And then Jerry Dipoto like, no, maybe like April or May. So I think I would go with Dan Wilson's words on that one. And then you got Troy Taylor, who's already starting the season with some kind of shoulder problem. I got to read exactly what it was. I think I have it with me right now.
It was a lat, right?
It had to be a lat. And they only sat him for precautionary reasons, it looks like. Trying to find that injury report, which I don't have on me, but it was something. It was a lat, something like that. So there's that. And then Jackson Kowar, who the Mariners traded Jared Kelenic for, he is also still recovering from a Tommy John. He's already shut down. Well, not shut down. He's on a 60-day IL, but usually the rule of thumb is he's pretty much gone for the whole season, because when you put someone on a 60-day, not only is he 60 days, then you have to consider how much rehab progress has he really done. And even after rehab, does he still have the stuff that he was showing, at least in the early 24 spring training? So if the Mariners bullpen is healthy, they could be the best team in baseball, could be enough for them to get to the playoffs, assuming the Mariners offense is slightly better than 24. But if they're not healthy, then you're going to see a little bit of what happened in 24, where, let's say an example against the Tigers, Brian Wu and Bryce Miller had borderline perfect games. Scott Service pulled them out, and next thing you know, the bullpen just completely laid an egg. They had so many meltdowns towards the end of the season. I think we saw the Dodgers game together. I think we did that Dodgers game and the Astros game together, and it was blown up by Jason Hayward Bay, and we happened to live stream both of them. So that's what the Mariners are going to have to do, is they're going to have to figure out how to be able to withstand all these injury problems. But if Gregory Santos is at least healthy, then that is encouraging. But man, Mariners really need Matt Brash. But the other concern I have is when you usually go through a Tommy John, it takes time to get that velocity back. Is he going to even have that really cool, that kicking kind of pitching style that he had? Like, remember when he pitches, he looks like he's kicking someone along with it. And I think that's not saying that was the reason why he got hurt, but you got to wonder like how much motion he does and how much that puts on his body, on top of the fact that he was pitching more than anyone else in that bullpen last season. So my concern is the health of that bullpen. Again, if they're healthy, they could be the best in baseball. If they're not healthy, expect more of an outcome of last season.
Yeah, I think that's a great point with the bullpen. They're always volatile. I mean, the Mariners, like I said, they could end up with the top bullpen in baseball. They could end up with like the 25th if things go wrong. And even Munoz has had some health scares at times, and he has kind of a violent delivery, and that's always something you have to be careful of. So, and I think for me, the concern is just, is there enough juice on this team? If a couple guys go down, do they have the depth to withstand it? Obviously I think like in the rotation they do, and if George Kirby misses a month, I think Emerson Hancock can fill in fine. But if it becomes longer than that, they lose another pitcher, then it becomes something that's a little bit more troublesome, and it's going to be harder for them to make up for that, and they're going to have to trade for somebody or sign somebody off the street. Offensively, I think they can be good, but there's also going to be, there's just the depth makes me a little bit worried. Not that I'm expecting everybody to have a backup that can hit, 350 out there, but if a couple guys go down, it's trouble. Where some teams have a little bit better prognosis if they lose a couple guys to withstand that and to come back from it. So that's probably a concern for me. And just the fact that this was not a playoff team last year. Like I said, they were close. That's reason for optimism. But it's also reason to be maybe more slightly pessimistic because they were not good enough last year and they did not make hardly any additions. Again, like you said, they're relying on bounce backs, which is fine because somebody will bounce back. Like one of those guys will, but some probably won't. And then there's a chance someone else drops off. So it's always a give and take around there. So I think just the pessimism stand from a team that wasn't there last year. Did they do enough? I mean, clearly I don't think they didn't, but it could be enough just from the sense that they get those bounce backs essentially.
Yeah, there's just so much questions about the team. Like, there are reasons to be excited, absolutely. Like, I'm still excited for this team than I was like in the 2010s when it was just Felix and Seager basically sacrificing themselves for the team, and unfortunately got nothing out of it. But concerns are there. They still outweigh all the positives and the excitement that this team still has. It's just, can people be healthy? Is there bounce backs? Are those going to happen? Or other concerns I might have is, what about the starters? Like, they can only be that healthy for so long. And as much as the Mariners and how they do their managing, it seems that they do load manage, I guess, tough to say it, but better than everyone else in baseball. Because I remember at first I thought this was like, oh, this is just Mariners' revolutionary idea of resting starters only to bring in the bullpen to blow it. But nope, it's actually regular practice in baseball, because I did see a video from Urinating Tree that the way that the pitchers throw these days, they're throwing much more for gas, and it seems that we're seeing much more fastballs, less breaking stuff these days, and seems to be less strategy because it seems to be more power reliant, which is why we're seeing a lot of these Tommy Johns, because that fastball, the way they're just throwing it and throwing it so violently, the body does take some kind of wear and tear out of it. So, yeah, health of the team's concern, health of the bullpen, and also just, can these players actually bounce back? So that's what I got for excitements and concerns. And now this is going to be my favorite part of the show, is the mailbag. Before I got on the plane, I put up the request of like, please throw me any questions you've got. And I think we got some good ones. We got 3 good questions. So that should keep us busy for the rest of the show. And this one's by Ian. It starts with, do you think Jorge Polanco can keep up his spring training performance hot streak as he is on the average and the on-base percentage? And let's just check those numbers to see if the numbers do back up of what my friend Ian is asking. Let's looking for Jorge Polanco's numbers. I was on the pitching stats. my tablet has like a lot of tabs up. I mean, when you're a YouTuber and someone that has multiple jobs, it's kind of not surprising at all. I think I saw 368, and I just got to hit refresh. Bear with me. Do appreciate it. Getting close. Jorge Polanco, he is a 368 hitter with a 368 OBP. Man, if he had those numbers for a regular season, I would be like, yep, put him as an all-star and might as well just put him in MVP conversations if he's putting up those numbers. But do I expect him to put up that kind of number? No. Can he keep up the hot streak? It's a very tough question. Like, it's something that there is no guarantees on that, because then his last year, he was plagued mostly by injuries, unfortunately, which is why it kind of plagued this season. And yet he still put up 16 home runs. But don't let the 16 home runs fool you, because take a look at his other numbers like batting average and on-base percentage. You might actually want to throw up. But I just don't see it. I can see at best he'll be a little bit better than he was in 24, but it won't be saying much. I have very low expectations on him, unfortunately, and we've seen it before. We've seen players completely lay an egg in spring training and they turn out fine, and we've seen players completely dominate spring training, like Cooper Hummel is a great example in 23. Yeah, his name was forgotten for a reason. You probably were like, wait, who's Cooper Hummel? Yeah, he was that guy for that Kyle Lewis trade. Yeah, great in spring training, was supposed to be the designated hitter. Oh, as soon as opening day happens, he did absolutely nothing for the team. I don't even think he even hit a home run at all, which is why he's pretty much out of the team. And where in the world is he? I'll just have to Google it sometime. But I don't really see him keeping up the spring training hot streak that he does have. Does it give him some more confidence? Sure. Does it show that he's possibly more healthy than he was last season? Yes. So maybe I'll see a more healthy Polanco, but I still don't see his batting average going above 250.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to keep this up, 368 with a 1,000 OPS, and that's got to be, like 10 at-bats, something like that, 12. So we're dealing with an extremely small sample size. I mean, truthfully, all spring training is extremely small. 7 at-bats, it looks like. 19 at-bats. So, I mean, all spring training is small sample size. Just need to be better. Get it closer to what his numbers were in 2023. If he can do that, then he's absolutely fine. He's a good player, and he'll help this team out tremendously. A little concerned about the defense at third base. That's probably something I'm more concerned about. I think, again, the bat probably bounces back a little bit. I think he was hurt last year. But, yeah, he's not going to keep this up. Nobody's going to keep that. If he kept that up, he'd be MVP candidate, and that's not going to happen. But you don't need him to keep that up. You just need him to be 10%, 15% better than last year. You know what I mean? If the OPS was 640, get it to 720, and you're in decent shape.
Yep, we'll have to see, and hopefully Jorge Polanco does get it right, because he's on an incentive contract. He's at a $7 million base salary, I believe, and if he does perform well, it will go into the 10 or 11 million. So Jorge Polanco, you have a reason to perform well because you get paid more. So go make that money. Go earn that bigger paycheck. Don't stay at 7 million. I know 7 million is still a lot of money. It really is. But why not get $4 million more? You know what $4 million more can do to you? It can do a lot of things that it would do for us. So go do it. Please do it. Please. Look at that $4 million as opportunity. Look at it as an opportunity to just throw everything into stocks, your retirement fund. I don't know. I'm just going really ridiculous. Or investments. Whatever. It's none of my business. So, question 2. We've got my friend Greg. He asked, is there a possible chance to see Rowdy Tellez to make the active roster? And let me see how he's been doing. He's been showing quite a bit of power in spring training. He was pretty much signed at the last second, and that was probably the most attention the Mariners got in that month, with the exception of everything else. And I just got to find his numbers because he has at least hit 2 home runs, which he has. So Rowdy Tellez in 29 at-bats, 11 games. So he's been playing quite a bit, batting .241 with a .290 OBP, 2 home runs. My prediction is, based on that, I don't think he'll make opening day roster, but I think they'll stash him at least for AAA, so he could be a stash player. So in case like Mitch Garver gets hurt again, and thank goodness he's actually okay now after he got hit by the pitch, along with Rick Riz getting hit by a foul ball. Thankfully, both of them are okay. They are total troopers. So hats off to those 2 men. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing is AAA roster is what I'm expecting him to be. So he could be that stash player. At least he'll hit bombs there, at least. And he did have a good season. I think it was 2022. I will double check and make sure that he did. Rowdy Tellez stats in 23. Might have been 22 or 23. In 2022, he had 35 home runs, 89 RBIs at the age of 27, 219 with a 306 OBP, 121 strikeouts. But hey, when you hit 35 home runs, even with a 219 average, 89 RBIs, 23 doubles, I'll take that as a Mariners fan. 35 home runs, we'll even take that, even with crappy averages. That seems more like Eugenio Suarez's numbers, just a little bit, kind of. I mean, if we get that Rowdy Tellez, I'll take it. And then Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander, they'll probably say, oh, yeah, we should be executives of the year for that. But ultimately, I don't see it happening unless any of those injuries happen. Or better yet, if Mitch Haniger is no longer on the team, because he still has that 1 year, $15 million option that he did pick up. And good thing you did, because you had to.
Yeah, I think Tellez does have a shot. I'm curious because Haniger hasn't played in like a week. So it does make me wonder if maybe they're going to make the move. I think Tellez gives you a little bit more than Haniger just in terms of being a left-handed bat in T-Mobile. Not saying Tellez is great. He hasn't been very good the last few years, even though he hit the 35 bombs. It was, like that's how he provides his value by hitting home runs. But I'd rather have him off the bench in the ninth inning, at least a chance to put one over the fence, down 3-2, pinch hit for Bliss or Demo or something against a righty in that spot, send Tellez up there, see if he runs into one. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Haniger here because he hasn't played much. They got to pay him the $15 million anyways. Are they willing to pay him $15 million to not play? I kind of would be at this point. You're going to eat the money regardless, and I think Tellez might provide a little more value. But again, like we're also talking about kind of the last spot on the roster. I don't know how much it's going to matter to Rooftop's point. I think worst case is he's stashed in kind of triple 4A player and he comes up occasionally and plays. I think he'll stay in the organization, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think he's got a shot. Just depends what they do with Haniger. You can't keep them both. You can't keep Haniger and Tellez. So if Haniger's on the roster, then no. If they do move on, then yeah, I think there's actually a decent chance he does make it.
I think best case scenario, what I can see out of Tellez, maybe we'll see a little bit of more of Mike Ford. And although that guy was very inconsistent, but it was still fun to watch him hit the bombs because when he hit a home run, that ball should have just left the stadium or at least hit the back of a stadium. So I think that's what I'm going to see out of Rowdy Tellez. I don't expect opening day roster as long as Haniger is around, but you just never know what they're going to do with Haniger. And if John Stanton wasn't so cheap, he would have given him the Bobby Bonilla contract, and if that had happened, I would have declared Happy Mitch Haniger Day, National Mitch Haniger Day. Let's do that, but nope. I guess Stanton doesn't want to pay interest either, and can you blame him on that perspective? Sure, but come on, Stanton, go spend the money. And now the final question. It's going to be the final question of the show, and it's by my friend Mark. Which position player on the Mariners do you think will take the biggest step forward this year? And you know what, J Trident, I want to have you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, it's tough because step forward and bounce back are two different things. Like bounce back, you'd say Garver, JP, guys like that. But to step up is a little bit different. So there's really, to me, two options. I think the easiest one would be Ryan Bliss, right? If he gets the everyday second baseman job, I think that would be huge. And we've seen him have a good spring training so far. I don't expect him to necessarily keep that up throughout the regular season. But man, if Ryan Bliss can be the everyday second baseman, that solves a lot of problems for the Seattle Mariners. And he's probably the only guy that's going to make the roster that wasn't on the roster essentially last season. That's a young guy coming up. So I think to me, the easiest answer would be a Ryan Bliss stepping up and delivering for this team. I think that would go a long way.
Ryan Bliss, I do like that answer, and he does seem like the only player that kind of does stand out on who does have an opportunity to take biggest step forward because everyone is really based on bounce back. I mean, let's look at the notable players in the lineup. We've got Randy Arozarena on left field. He's dependent on a bounce back. Then Julio Rodriguez is dependent on the bounce back. But I do think he is the player that you can say step forward because he's still due for one. Right field, Victor Robles. like 320 something average that he had, but do we expect him to go 350? I don't. Like, even if he just hit 280s or 270s, I'll be like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll take it. Just don't go like 250s or below, because then I'll be like, wow. And 24 season with that little stretch he had, cute little stretch, then it would be saying fluke. So at that point, in case he does stink, I'm be like, okay, Victor, just drop the bunt. Now, third base Polanco, that's a bounce back. J.P. Crawford, that's a bounce back. Second base, Ryan Bliss, yeah, bounce back. No, that's the breakout one. Maybe like Luke Raley takes a step forward to like what, maybe 25 homers and his batting average goes up a little bit. He's still a young guy. So and Cal Raleigh, I mean, well, how much more is he going to do? Is he going to hit 40 home runs, which he still can because he does have the power to do it?
Emerson Hancock maybe be another one.
He is, but that's a pitcher. Pitchers are not position players. He said position players. He said player. Yeah, just player. But I'm going to say between Julio Rodriguez and Luke Raley, I think those are going to be the most appropriate ones. I mean, Julio Rodriguez has been playing that. He's been talking that big game for the last 2 years. Like, I still remember in 23 or 24, he said 23 was, oh, yeah, that was like my 33 home runs. That was my down year. I'm going to take it a step forward. It's like, okay, yeah, you got to back up the talk. Oh, no, he didn't. He waited until Scott Service got fired to finally actually play exactly what he said he was going to do. So, yep, he says Ryan Bliss. I say Julio / Luke Raley. I mean, anyone else I would take a step forward is anyone in the farm system. And and I forgot to mention Harry Ford. He actually got a base hit or two yesterday. And I think he threw a runner out. So that was pretty impressive. And Harry Ford's a young guy. And knowing catchers, they typically take a little bit more time in the minor leagues. I think it's a combination of the hitting and the catching and being mature enough to actually lead the team. But he does make an attractive trade piece. But on the other hand, you still want him because in case Cal Raleigh doesn't sign that extension, and by the way, Mariners have no excuses because his agent isn't Scott Boras anymore, it's still nice to have Harry Ford in that back pocket because he is a highly hyped prospect and he got more of that hype from that World Baseball Classic performance. So, yeah, I forgot to mention Harry Ford, but those are the three questions, and I think that's going to do it. And just want to say shout out to Peoria Stadium for letting us be here early before the gates even open. What time is it now? Since it's 11:10, so 20 minutes to spare. So thank you very much. Thank you, Alaska Airlines, for getting here actually early, considering we had a little bit of a late flight because they had to accommodate for the connecting flights. And you know what? If I was on their shoes, I'm thanking them for being really nice about it because connecting flights is an absolute nightmare to deal with. I've been in those situations. I sprinted all the way when I was going to Brazil, and I had to go to Dallas, Texas. I was literally just whoosh, going full speed as if I feel like I was running like Julio to get to that plane. Luckily, I still had a few minutes. I still had like 15 minutes to spare, but I still had to race that clock. So hats off to Alaska Airlines. Hats off to Peoria Stadium because I tried the other stadium. Am I going to say the name? No, I don't want to make them look bad in the organization. I'm not that kind of guy as I would think. Maybe you guys disagree. I don't know. But when I called those guys, I was like, hey, I'm looking to do the Scottsdale Stadium because I think they're going to have the cooler players, which they do because my other favorite prospect, Laz Montez, is there. And they're like, well, if I let you guys in, then I have to let everyone else in, and it'll be like Black Friday. It'll be a circus, and we are this team. They didn't say that specifically, but they totally gave me that vibe. And I guess when you're an organization that I guess wins World Series, I guess you're in that position to say that. And as for the Mariners, they were very accommodating. The only thing we had to do was just sign some paperwork and to make sure that they know us, we know them, so nobody gets in trouble. So hats off to Peoria and just hats off to this amazing atmosphere. Like I've only been in Arizona for like an hour or two, and it's already exceeded my expectations. So thank you very much. And thank you, J Trident, for joining us for this show. And any last words before we hit the stop button?
Go Mariners.
Go Mariners. And also the advice I'll give you guys, go Mariners and don't quit your day job because we both are taking that advice for ourselves. Go Mariners.